Pranking. A lot of people have recently come to realize that the pranks on YouTube have deteriorated into a mean-spirited being a dickfest with low humoristic value. Videos complaining about these insulting and sometimes even dangerous pranks have as a result become increasingly common. This will not be one of those videos. The points about why these pranks and social experiments with sensationalized titles aren't really pranks have been repeated so often, I don't think I could contribute much to the debate, not that there really is a debate to begin with. No, in this video I will focus on something else. Why is it that some of these mean-spirited pranks are still funny, while some others are not? Why is it so hard to define what a real prank is? And how do I go about inventing a prank of my own? To start off, I want to explain how I see the spectrum of pranks. In many cases, people see it one-dimensionally, a scale from dick move to prank, with some arbitrary line somewhere that, once crossed, separates douchebag behavior from pranks. I do not share this view, for the very same reason why I dislike many politically incorrect comedians while I love others. In my opinion, the spectrum from pranks and comedy is pretty much identical and two-dimensional. On one scale, we have humorous to not humorous. On the other scale, we have good-natured to mean-spirited. And I'm fairly certain that this two-dimensional nature is the reason why many people are so unsure about the nature of pranks. Let's see a few examples. A man walks into a low-income neighborhood, approaches a group of black people and yells some racial slurs, or words that sound similar to racial slurs to cause misunderstanding. The people react in anger, screaming back insults and maybe even threatening the man, confronting him about his behavior. The man resolves the situation by telling the victims of the prank that it was just a prank. As you can see in this example, a one-dimensional scale would probably simply label this as not a prank, the end. In my two-dimensional explanation, I would rate this a not humorous and mean-spirited, which also basically means this is not a prank. So, why the second dimension in my rating? To understand this, I will take the premise of this prank and adjust it slightly. A man walks into a low-income neighborhood, approaches a group of black people and yells some racial slurs, or words that sound similar to racial slurs to cause misunderstanding. A black person who is in on the joke reacts in an unusual way to the insults, for example, by acting embarrassed as if he was complimented instead of being insulted, and maybe even starting to flirt with the approaching man. The group of victims react in confusion about this unusual reaction. The man or his helper resolved the situation by pointing out the hidden cameras or telling them that it was just a prank. In this adjusted example, insults were still being used, but suddenly the nature of the joke has changed. The one-dimensional scale would already have crossed the arbitrary line from dick move to prank, even though the group of victims were subject to the same amount of insults. On the two-dimensional scale, however, the change becomes more apparent. While the good-natured versus mean-spirited scale didn't change, as the means used in this pranks were still insults, the humorous versus not humorous scale has shifted from not humorous to humorous, as the reaction of the victims no longer happens in response to the insults, but to the unexpected element that is the reaction of the second prankster. More on the requirements of the humorous versus not humorous scale in a bit. Based on these new circumstances, I would rate the whole thing as a politically incorrect prank, which would show that you can still be a dick while at the same time being humorous. Important to note, you do not have to share the same sense of humor and do not have to enjoy these type of pranks. More about how humor works in a bit. But let's go back to the example. To see how this two-dimensional rating works, I'll adjust the initial example again, this time to achieve an outcome that is good-natured but not humorous. A man walks into a low-income neighborhood, approaches a group of black people and yells some compliments, or approaches a single person of the group and makes positive comments about his looks. The victims, in air quotes, react favorably, for example by smiling, thanking him for the comments, or maybe doubting his sincerity of the comments. The situation is either resolved by pointing out the hidden cameras or not resolved at all. In this scenario, the scale has shifted from mean-spirited to good-natured, but the resulting video isn't particularly humorous. We ignore situational comedy based on the reactions that could happen at the moment. In the one-dimensional scale, we now already have a problem, because this video, while having a setup similar to a prank, with hidden cameras trying to get a reaction out of a group of, in air quote, victims, it doesn't really feel like a prank. Of course, this doesn't mean that they haven't managed to find a way. On YouTube, this is often achieved by simply giving those videos without a humorous component the title of social experiment. But since the term isn't well defined, we'll see that even more things will end up in this category. You might even have an example in mind for a humorous social experiment that, well, is humorous, which would disprove my theory. Granted for the fact that I did consider this while making this video, and I will address this in my explanation about different types of humors in prank. Now, you might expect that I will adjust the example for a third and final time to achieve a prank that is both humorous and good-natured, but I will not do so at the moment because there's something else I need to discuss first. In the examples so far, I have simply stated that some things are humorous and others are not, without giving any explanation about why I say one is humorous opposed to others. Some may even oppose my descriptions, stating that they do find something I described as non-humorous as funny. Humor in its most basic form happens when an action does not meet the expectation of the viewer experiencing it. A guy slipping on a banana peel is something that happens so rarely in real life that the view on it is considered humorous. The theme of someone slipping on a banana peel, however, has been used numerous times in movies and cartoons, so that the viewer might not longer find the situation as unexpected and therefore humorous. Another thing preventing him from seeing the situation as funny could be that he is focusing on an entirely different expectation, the expectation of the person hurting themselves when falling down. Unless the guy falls onto a trampoline, which then would also defy the expectation of this particular viewer, they might not find the situation funny. To resolve this issue, we will have to find a way to create a situation that is unexpected for the largest possible amount of people. We know now that the humor comes from the idea of the unexpected, or rather the defiance of expectations. The problem is that, in a prank, this can be achieved through two different means. First, the victim experiencing something unexpected and reacting in either a normal or unusual way. Second, the victim experiencing something completely normal and reacting in an unexpected or unusual way. In the first situation, the humor of the prank arises from the victim experiencing the unexpected, while in the second situation, the humor arises from the audience experiencing the unexpected. A prank, however, is something that happens between the perpetrator and the victim. Therefore, if the humor doesn't arise from something unexpected happening to the victim, in my definition, it is not a prank. Incidentally, this is also the explanation for why humorous social experiments exist. In those, a situation is created where the author of the experiment himself is unsure about the expectations of the test subjects. The humor in a social experiment arises when the test subjects have an expectation of the situation they are placed in that aligns with the expectations of the audience, but react in an unusual way. This would be the second type of unexpected, where the expectations of the audience aren't met. Or, if the test subjects have an expectation of the situation that contradicts the expectations of the audience. This would also be the second type of unexpected, where the expectations of the audience aren't met. Here we can see that the requirements of a prank, that the test subjects or victims experience something unexpected, are met, and therefore social experiments are not pranks. There are always some exceptions where they are simply incorrectly categorized, but that's something you can't really put into a theory because, well, errors happen all the time. But we are here to talk about pranks, not social experiments. In our first example for a prank, a group of people was insulted and they reacted in anger. The humor, if any, obviously does not come from the victims experiencing something unexpected or defying expectations. Being insulted is something that happens in real life, and by being part of this particular minority, the racial slurs are also something they may encounter in the real world. The only way the thing could end up being funny for the audience is if the victims react in an unusual way to the insults. By our definition of a prank, that only setups that result in the victims experiencing something unexpected themselves, this example wasn't a prank, but trial and error, hoping for the humor by the way of the second type of unexpected. In our second example, a group of people was insulted, but they in turn get to experience the unusual reaction of someone they thought to be part of their group. Their expectations of all members of their group being equally angry about the insults wasn't met. The unexpected about the situation results in them being confused or entertained. At this point, we already have met our requirements for a prank, but that doesn't mean that the second type of humor couldn't happen as well. The audience watching this prank now have the expectation of the victims being confused about the one person reacting in such an unusual way. If for some reason the victims, however, now also defied this expectation of the viewer, for example by all imitating the behavior of the one person, another layer of humor would be added, which does nothing to make this whole thing a prank, but helps to make it even more entertaining. As I said early on, the whole point of this video was to find out why some mean-spirited pranks are funny and some are not, and here's the answer. Accidental comedy from the reactions of the victims can happen simply if they don't react in a way the audience expects them to. But the easiest way to find a humorous video is by having the victim within the video experience something unexpected. And sadly, this is also the reason why the, in air quote, pranks gone wrong videos are so immensely popular. I'll explain with an example. A dickhead, in air quote, prankster walks into a low-income neighborhood and approaches a group of black people. He insults them by calling racial slurs, or by deliberately causing misunderstanding by using words that sound like racial slurs, and maybe even shoves a person or two. The prankster and the audience expect the victims to be angry. The prankster, however, for some reason or another, expects the magic words "it was just a prank" to resolve the whole issue for him and to let him get away with this douchebag behavior. His expectations are not met and he gets punched in the face. In this example, the roles of victim and perpetrator were reversed, because the original prankster set up a situation that ended up defying his expectation of the outcome. This unexpected result for the new victim, the original prankster, meets the criteria for a prank, while the role reversal is what actually makes this prank gone wrong, not the getting punched in the face. This classic setup for a prank, combined with the schadenfreude that many people experience from a smug asshole like this prankster getting punched in the face, and the experience of feeling smarter than the creator of the video, what did you think would happen? Results in a very effective video that offers a lot of entertainment for the audience, while the creator of this content has to put in very little effort. The creator himself is most likely not even aware why this type of video works so good. He probably simply assumes that the violence or stereotypical reactions of a certain minority he presents in his video attract the audience, and while those certainly are partly responsible for this success, they aren't the real reason why these videos work as well as they do. Apart from the mean spirit of these videos, as they always require the prankster to insult or even attack other people, this low effort is what pisses me most personally. It's lazy comedy, repeating the same lame joke over and over because it somehow keeps on getting laughs. It's the laugh track of the YouTube world, if you so will. The most important point I wanted to make in this video was not to simply complain about these bad pranks, which I stated at the beginning of this video, but to actually offer advice on how many of these pranks could be improved to become actual pranks, and provide a simple to understand blueprint on how you can create pranks of your own. The most important thing about the prank is the victim. Without a victim, there is no prank. But in this process of designing a prank, the victim will only be selected afterwards, after the idea for the prank is already finished. The reason for this is that this video is mostly about pranks done for an audience, not about pranks done between friends. Friends have special rules, since there's a lot more you can afford to do to someone you already know. In pranks played on strangers, you don't know the person who you will prank. You at best know their job based on where the prank is being played. To start off with our prank creation, we therefore ignore the victim and start off with something else, the premise. A prank, by our definition, is something with an unexpected element happening to the victim, and to design something that defies the expectation, we need to know what is being expected first. For this, we either select a location and take a look at everything we normally would consider usual or expected, or an activity and what about it is considered normal and how you do this activity correctly. Let's say you live close to a shopping center and you think that this location would make a good backdrop for your prank video. After selecting this location, we analyze the location for normal and completely usual activities or type of people. At a shopping center, I would personally expect people running around with shopping bags, lots of signs advertising products, people spending money, and people talking about things they still want or need to buy. Now that we have isolated the expected and usual, we can simply go through the list and turn these things around and change them enough so that they become something unusual or unexpected. You can also think of something unusual from scratch, but that it makes betraying the expectation of the victim a lot harder. To do this, we simply change around every aspect of the examples we found long enough until the result is either completely absurd, highly unusual, or something similar. For example, people running around with shopping bags could be turned into people running around with way too many shopping bags, defying the expectation by exaggerating the common situation. Or shopping bags running around with people. This would be defying the expectation by reversing the role of the observed situation. Or people running around without shopping bags but with bought articles. This would be defying the expectation by ignoring the common sense of transporting your bought goods with bags. The second observation of lots of signs advertising products could be turned into lots of signs trying to prevent you from buying products. This would be defying the expectation by reversing the role of the observed situation. The observed situation of people spending a lot of money in shopping centers could be turned into people spending ridiculous amounts of money. You don't actually have to spend money, you just have to be doing so for the prank. And this would be defying the expectation by exaggerating a common situation. Last but not least, we have people talking about things they still want or need to buy. This could be turned into people complaining that they have already bought everything they might want or need. This would be defying the expectation by exaggerating a problem that exists within reality. But the problem is to really exaggerate it, because if you only have people talking about it, it could be considered as expected by wasteful and spoiled youth, and this would make the prank, well, not humorous. We could also have people talking about things they want to sell at a store. This would be defying the expectation by contradicting the purpose of a shopping center. These are all examples of how through simple means the expected can be turned into the unexpected. You obviously don't need to do this for everything you observed. I'm only doing this to make it easier to understand. Nor do you need to keep the ideas if they are obviously bad. Some ideas might appear to you to be funnier than others. This is obviously subject to your personal sense of humor, while others might be funny but be hard to implement in reality, for example the shopping bags carrying around people. Now that we have found a few possible unexpected situations, we simply have to find out how we can have our victim participate in this expectation-defying situation. In most cases, it boils down to either having them participate passively or actively. In the passive scenario, the victims are, just like the audience, also only spectators who get to experience the unusual events about to happen. Passive participation is a lot easier to achieve than active participation and is generally recommended not only for beginners, but also in all pranks that might be on the mean-spirited side of the two-dimensional prank scale. By having the victim only observe something, you are protecting them from pain and fear, and you are protecting yourself from the consequences that might arise from throwing unsuspecting people in these situations. It is important to note that the word victim often doesn't make much sense in the passive pranks, so to make sure it is understood, victims in passive pranks are everyone who is exposed to the unusual behavior and reacts to it, and more specifically, everyone whose reactions gets filmed. In our example, pretty much all things could be used as passive participation pranks. You could, for example, have a person push the massive amounts of shopping bags, or articles he apparently possesses or refuses to pack into shopping bags, around with a wheelbarrow. The victims in this example would be everyone watching the situation in confusion, or everyone being filmed for their reactions. We could also have a person in a shopping bag costume carry around a human, or dolls attached to handles for easy carrying. We could also have a person put up fake advertising signs that make fun of the product they're normally trying to sell. Or we could have a person act like he's spending ridiculous amounts of money. This could be achieved by handing a second person in a butler outfit a bundle of cash, or by wearing a hat origami folded out of, well, cash. As explained previously, these ideas don't necessarily have to be implementable in reality. I'm just creating ideas for the sake of this video. And last but not least, we could have someone carry around lots of items and act like they're trying to sell them to the stores in the shopping center, and so on. These were all passive ideas, and probably the way you should start when thinking about how to connect your ideas with the victims. Some ideas might just not work with passively participating victims though. In our examples, the trying to sell things to the store idea sounds pretty boring. In these cases, you shouldn't spend too much time on trying to somehow get these ideas to work anyway. but rather discard these ideas completely or see if an active participation makes the whole thing more humorous. Active participation makes a prank even greater because the reactions of the victim become more personal. But the active participation is something that just doesn't work for everyone. You need an eye for whom to approach, the right feel on how to get a person to participate out of their own free will, because you can't force them. You force someone against their will is almost criminal. Deceiving them to participate by, stating falsehoods, that's fair game. The right timing for when to resolve the situation is also something you need to have, because a prank only ends with either the victim having the opportunity to realize themselves that they were pranked, or by you explaining that they were pranked. You can't leave them in this state of confusion forever. They themselves realizing this fact, however, should be the result you are aiming for, because generally it is more entertaining for both your victim and your audience. And you need a personality that allows you to easily approach strangers. So, how do we get people to participate? To achieve this, we'll take another look at our ideas, but this time we adjust them a bit to make the victim unknowingly part of the, from the outside, unusual situation, so that they find themselves to be the only sane person within this insane scenario. You could, for example, have the person with way too many shopping bags push his wheelbarrow, but there are so many bags that they almost fall off the barrow. Nicely ask your victim if they could help you balancing the wheelbarrow. This might take a few tries to find someone, which is one of the reasons why active participation pranks are harder to achieve. But like explained before, you can only ask people to help you can't force them. Once you have found a victim, push the wheelbarrow while they are trying to keep the bags from falling off. They are now part of the weirdo group that has too many bags. For our second idea, instead of only putting up fake signs, you could also put up a marketing researcher, which would be yourself in a costume, next to the sign, who ask passerbys about their opinion about these signs. These reactions themselves might already be entertaining, but to really make them actively participate, ask them what they would improve about the sign, and then defy their expectation by acting like all their hopefully logical suggestions are absurd. For the third idea, spend ridiculous amounts of money, or appear to do so, as described before, and make this even more apparent by asking your victim, seemingly at random, for advice. For example, should I buy the iPhone 6 or the Samsung Galaxy? Then after they help you, ignore their advice by saying something like, oh, that's all too complicated, I think I'll simply buy both and then throw away the one I don't like, which would defy the expectations of the victim. And for the fourth idea, you could carry around stuff you'd like to sell to stores in the shopping center and ask your victim whether they think your suit fits, then explain your reason for asking. For example, I want to sell this Xbox, but the last time I tried they simply ignored me. I think it must be because I looked like a homeless person, and then act like they are the crazy person when suggesting that selling stuff to stores is unusual. With that, we have created the basic idea for our prank. Theoretically, we could now go and directly film this thing, but our prank is still a bit rough around the edges, and that's where the last step comes in, refining our prank. There are many things that can make a prank even better. You have an unusual or expensive prop that you can use in your production. Why not check whether you can fit it in somewhere in the prank? If not, you can restart the creation process, this time with this prop being the usual, normal, expected thing, and then, working on to find the unusual about it. You could have an idea of what type of person you'll encounter as your victim. For example, if you know that you'll play your prank in a school, it's likely that you'll encounter a teacher. And you can use this additional information to better understand what this person might view as expected about the situation, making your contradictions and unexpected situations more suited for the current circumstances. You like the idea of your prank, but you want to increase the impact of the victim or strengthen their reaction. You could try to put a bit more resources into the prank, for example by exaggerating your idea, adding additional people into the prank. Or you could add another layer of your prank by combining it with the second prank idea, or by adding another twist on top of it. You can break the expectation of the victim and the audience as many times as you want, and the more you do it, the better. For example, In the shopping bag wheelbarrow prank, we successfully got a person to balance some of the bags for us, which results in them being part of the weirdo shopping group, an unusual situation for them. You can strengthen the impact of this situation on the victim by removing yourself from the situation or pushing them into the spotlight, which in this example could work like this. After having them balance the bags for a bit, ask them if they would try to push the wheelbarrow instead so that you can balance the bags. Once the person is pushing the wheelbarrow, slowly back away from the whole thing and leave the person and the barrel alone. Not only have you shoved them into the spotlight by making it appear as if they are the crazy person shopping way too much, but you have also broken their expectation a second time by showing a highly unusual behavior, which is leaving your belongings alone with a stranger. After all this is done, depending on your resources, you can add even more impact or twists. You could have some friends in the crowd audibly comment about the victim, have a friend approach the victim and ask why they are pushing around so many shopping bags, and then afterwards don't believe the explanation, for example, doubting the existence of the initial wheelbarrow owner, making them appear even crazier. Or have a friend in a shopping center security outfit question the victim about the origins of all these shopping bags. Then also don't believe their explanation or deliberately misunderstand them when they say that's not theirs. Have the security guy open a few of the bags to inspect the contents and it turns out all the bags are full of dragon dildos or something. And then cue sideways stares at the victim by even more frames. And so on and so on. The more resources you have, the more twists you can add and the more you can strengthen the impact about this absurd situation by having other people pointing out the absurdity and the connection to the victim. But please use common sense. We only use victim to describe who is at the receiving end of the prank. We don't want to make them real victims. We want to have fun, make a prank and not to mentally abuse them. The fake advertising idea could also be strengthened and built upon in a very similar way. You could have the market researcher leave the scene to make the victim look like they are the marketing researcher, have people approach and ask about the weird advertisement, and then, well, they can't explain it, or doubt them when they say they aren't working for this company, and so on and so on. The rich person spending way too much money idea could also be strengthened, but it's a bit hard, because the amount of money being spent already looks absurd to begin with, but we can still add layers to this idea by combining it with other ideas. For example, combining it with the too many shopping ideas seems logical since buying would result in many shopping bags. Or if you have the resources to do so, you could pay your victim to do something ridiculous to further strengthen the image of you being obscenely rich. For example, paying them to fan you with a huge leaf or to feed you grapes or something. The selling things to stores idea seems to be a good example of an idea that has reached a dead end. A state where it doesn't really get better, but sadly not because it was so good that it didn't need improvement to begin with. The idea was unusual and unexpected, but it simply pales in comparison to the other ones we put together while making some examples. And I can't think of really anything to make it more entertaining, so I would discard this idea. After all of that, we now finally have a finished prank, one that scores high on the humorous versus not humorous scale. And that's also the only thing this process will teach you, because there is no strategy on how to make a mean-spirited or good-natured prank. And if there was, the mean-spirited people would ignore it anyway. For this, there's only common sense. But at least everyone else now knows what separates a rude and possibly political incorrect prank from straight up dickhead behavior, or why something is a prank and why something is not. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you thought of any pranks of your own, feel free to share them in the comments so we get to see some of the pranks created using this guide. Or if you are too lazy to film one yourself, you could also write down your idea so someone else gets the inspiration. Last but not least, I would ask you to share this video with anyone who does some of those, well, bad pranks, so we can maybe finally get rid of them. I normally don't ask people to share my videos because it sounds a bit annoying, but to be frank, these fake pranks I see all over YouTube annoy me even more. So if you know anyone who keeps watching them, please share it and maybe we will manage to, well, get rid of them. With all of that being said, enjoy your day and you lost the game.